Fleet Fury emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Talvarius system. Admiral Kyung-ho stood on the bridge of the Retribution and studied the tactical display. Before him lay the Talvarian homeworld, protected by 300 warships, dozens of orbital defense platforms, and planetary shields strong enough to withstand sustained bombardment. 8 billion Talvarian civilians lived on that world. Kyung-ho had no interest in harming them. His target was the military and the war criminals who led it. But he also knew that taking the world without massive civilian casualties would be difficult. He opened a channel that broadcast on every frequency. His message went to the military, to the government, and to every civilian on the planet below. People of Talvarius, I am Admiral Kyung-ho of the Earth Defense Fleet. We are not here to conquer you. We are not here to enslave you. We are here because your leaders committed a war crime. They destroyed a ship of healing. They murdered 600 people who raised no weapons against anyone. We ask your military to surrender. Your civilians have nothing to fear from us. Along with his words, he broadcast the complete footage of the Healing Dawn attack. The sensor logs, the medical records, the dying messages of the crew. Everything that proved beyond doubt what had happened. On the planet below, millions of Talvarians watched. Many had not known the full truth about the hospital ship. Their government had called it a regrettable incident and moved on. Now they saw Captain Jinho die on his bridge. They saw Dr. Minji throw herself over a wounded Talvarian soldier. They saw their own people being saved by human healers, right up until the moment those healers were murdered. The effect was immediate. Protests erupted in the capital city. Thousands of Talvarians took to the streets demanding answers. Why had their military fired on healers? Why had their government lied about it? Why were they at war with people who had only tried to help? The protests spread to other cities. Millions marched. The Talvarian government tried to shut down the broadcasts, but intelligence officer Seojin's team had planted the footage too deeply in their systems. It kept reappearing. Every time they deleted it, it came back. War Master Korvath watched the protests from his command center. His carefully constructed lies were falling apart. His own people were turning against him. He had only one option left. All ships attack formation, he ordered. We'll destroy the human fleet before they can reach orbit. His officers looked at him with doubt. Some wanted to surrender. Others wanted to arrest Korvath and hand him over to the humans. But military discipline held. The Talvarian fleet moved forward to engage. Admiral Kyung-ho watched them come. They chose to fight, he said quietly. Very well. All ships prepare for combat. Rules of engagement remain in effect. Minimize civilian casualties. Target military assets only. The battle began. The Talvarian orbital platforms fired first. Massive plasma cannons sent brilliant bolts of energy toward the human fleet. Human point defense systems intercepted most of them. The ones that got through hit shields that flickered but held. Human shield technology was more advanced than the Talvarians realized. Fleet Fury's dreadnoughts returned fire. Their railguns spoke with thunderous authority. Solid metal slugs, each one weighing several tons, accelerated to relativistic speeds. They hit the orbital platforms with devastating force. The platforms were heavily armored, but they couldn't withstand the kinetic energy. One by one, they exploded or went dark. Captain Borum launched her strike craft. 3,000 fighters and bombers poured from the carriers. They formed up into attack waves and dove toward the Talvarian fleet. The enemy tried to intercept them, but human pilots were simply better trained. They had practiced for this moment for weeks. They knew exactly what to do. The fighters carried precision missiles designed to disable rather than destroy. They targeted engine sections, weapons arrays, and command systems. Ships that lost engines drifted helplessly. Ships that lost weapons couldn't fight back. The goal was to neutralize the fleet, not annihilate it. But some Talvarian ships fought desperately. They knew what surrender meant. It meant facing justice for everything they had done. Some captains chose to fight to the death rather than face trial. Human destroyers moved in to engage the Talvarian heavy cruisers. The destroyers were smaller and faster. They used their superior maneuverability to stay out of the cruisers' firing arcs while hammering them with railgun fire. It was like watching wolves bring down larger prey through speed and coordination. Intelligence officer Seojin activated her cyber weapons. Viruses that had been planted in Talvarian systems during previous engagements now activated simultaneously. Talvarian targeting computers began giving false data. Their shields flickered randomly. Their communication systems crashed. The Talvarian fleet descended into chaos. 3 hours into the battle, Marine Commander Jiwoo received her orders. Commander, 3 orbital fortresses are still operational. Take them. Jiwoo smiled grimly. 5th Division, prepare for insertion. We're going fortress hunting. The boarding pods launched. They were small, fast, and covered in stealth coatings. The orbital fortresses tried to shoot them down, but most pods made it through. They slammed into the fortress hulls and burned through the armor. Marines poured inside. The fighting in the fortresses was fierce. The defenders knew they were fighting for their homeworld. But the human Marines were better trained and better equipped. More importantly, they had clear objectives. They moved through the fortresses with practiced efficiency, securing key systems and neutralizing resistance. Jiwoo led the assault on the largest fortress herself. Her team fought their way to the command center. The Talvarian commander, a veteran officer named Kelrax, stood with his weapon drawn. "I won't surrender," he said. "I won't let you destroy my world." Jiwoo kept her weapon pointed at him but didn't fire. "We're not here to destroy your world. We're here to stop your government from committing more war crimes. Put down your weapon. This doesn't have to end with your death." Kelrax looked at his tactical display. His fortress was lost. His fleet was being torn apart. The human ships weren't bombing cities or targeting civilians. They were fighting a clean war, following rules his own side had broken. He lowered his weapon. "I surrender." Throughout the fortress, his officers followed his example. The Marines took prisoners and treated them well. When they found wounded Talvarians, human medics treated them immediately. This confused the prisoners. They had expected brutality. Instead, they found professionalism. On the planet below, War Master Korvath watched his defenses collapse. 200 of his 300 ships were destroyed or disabled. The orbital platforms were gone. The fortresses were captured, and still the human fleet advanced. He made one last desperate decision. He would crash the military command station into the capital city. 8 million people would die, but it would be a final act of defiance against the human invaders. He began the sequence to deorbit the station. His remaining loyal officers carried out his orders. The massive station began to move, slowly at first, then faster. Its trajectory would take it straight into the heart of the capital. Captain Minho commanded the stealth destroyer Shadow's Edge. His ship specialized in infiltration missions. He had been watching the command station carefully. When he saw it begin to move, he understood immediately what Korvath planned. "All stop," he ordered. "Prepare boarding team. We're going in." The Shadow's Edge was designed for exactly this kind of mission. It slipped close to the command station, using stealth systems that made it nearly invisible. Minho's special operations team launched in pods too small for the station's sensors to detect. They burned through the hull and entered the station. What followed was a desperate race against time. The station was accelerating toward the planet. They had maybe 15 minutes before it reached the point of no return. Minho's team fought through the corridors. They were outnumbered, but they had surprise and superior equipment. They used stun weapons when possible, lethal force when necessary. Every second counted. They reached the command center with 4 minutes to spare. War Master Korvath stood at the controls, his hand on the final activation switch. He looked at Minho with hatred. "You're too late," he said. "I'm already committed. The station will fall and your precious rules of war mean nothing." Minho didn't argue. He shot Korvath in the shoulder, a precise shot that knocked him away from the controls without killing him. His team rushed forward to stop the deorbit sequence. The station's engines cut out with 90 seconds to spare. The station stabilized in orbit. Minho stood over Korvath, who clutched his wounded shoulder. "You're under arrest for war crimes. You will face trial." The battle was over. Of Korvath's 300 ships, 250 were destroyed or captured. The orbital defenses were eliminated. The command station was secured. And through it all, not a single bomb had fallen on a civilian target. Admiral Kyung-ho broadcast another message to the planet. "The Talvarian military has been defeated. War Master Korvath is in custody. We are establishing occupation authority. Martial law is in effect. But civilians have nothing to fear. We are here to ensure justice, not to conquer." On the ground, the Talvarian Provisional Government, formed by military officers who had opposed the war, and civilian leaders from the protest movement, offered surrender. Kyung-ho's response was broadcast across all Talvarian frequencies. "This is the officer who fired on our healers. He will fact War Master Korvath sat in his command center on Talvarius Prime and watched the battle recordings for the 5th time. 70 ships destroyed in less than 2 hours. War Captain Rexith captured. The humans had not just won. They had crushed his forces with terrifying efficiency. Get me casualty reports from the other intercept groups," he ordered. His aide looked uncomfortable. "Sir, the other groups are withdrawing. They saw what happened to Rexith's fleet. They don't want to engage." Korvath felt cold fear settle in his chest. The humans were supposed to be weak. They were newcomers to the galaxy, barely a century in space. Their largest previous battle had involved 50 ships. Now they had come with hundreds, and they fought like demons. The Galactic Council sent urgent messages to Earth demanding a ceasefire. President Sunwoo's response was simple and public. "We will accept unconditional surrender, nothing less." The Council representatives were shocked. One did not make demands like that of a major galactic power. But then they watched the battle recordings from the Kelthros graveyard and understood. The humans were not making demands. They were stating facts. Admiral Kyung-ho did not rush toward the Talvarian homeworld. That would be the obvious move. And Kyung-ho had not become a legendary commander by being obvious. Instead, Fleet Fury began a systematic campaign to destroy the Talvarian Empire's ability to make war. During the first week, human ships struck at supply depots throughout the outer colonies. They didn't attack cities or civilian targets. They went after military facilities with surgical precision. Storage facilities holding ammunition and weapons were reduced to slag. Fuel depots exploded in brilliant fireballs. Food warehouses for military personnel were destroyed. Captain Borum led these raids personally. Her carrier group would jump into a system, launch strike craft, destroy the targets, and jump out before reinforcements could arrive. The Talvarians tried to defend their facilities, but the humans were too fast. By the end of the first week, the Talvarian military had lost 40% of its supplies. During the second week, the attacks shifted to communications. Intelligence Officer Seojin directed her teams to identify and destroy relay stations. These were the facilities that allowed the Talvarian military to coordinate across their empire. Human cyber attacks fried the computer systems. Missile strikes destroyed the physical installations. Within days, the Talvarian fleet was scattered and unable to communicate effectively. Seojin also continued her psychological warfare. She broadcast footage of captured Talvarian prisoners being treated well. Human medical personnel gave them food, water, and medical care. The prisoners looked healthy and unharmed. This created confusion among Talvarian forces. Their propaganda had called humans barbaric. The reality was very different. During the third and fourth weeks, Fleet Fury implemented siege tactics. Human ships blockaded major Talvarian military worlds. No ships could enter or leave. Korvath tried to break through the blockades, but every attempt failed. The human ships were simply better, faster, more accurate, more disciplined. The blockades were selective. Food and medical supplies were allowed through for civilians. Weapons and ammunition were not. Admiral Kyung-ho wanted to make a point. Humanity was at war with the Talvarian military, not with Talvarian civilians. On one of the blockaded worlds, a Talvarian destroyer captain named Vexith watched the situation deteriorate. Her ship was running low on fuel and ammunition. Her crew was exhausted, and she had seen the footage of the Healing Dawn attack that the humans kept broadcasting. Vexith had not known about the hospital ship. The military had hidden it from most officers. Now she understood why the humans had come. They had come for justice. She made a decision that would have been unthinkable a month ago. She opened a channel to the human blockade fleet. "This is Captain Vexith of the destroyer Swift Wind. I wish to surrender my ship." The human commander, a young officer named Minseo, was surprised but professional. "Understood, Captain Vexith. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. You and your crew will be treated according to the rules of war." Vexith did as instructed. Human Marines came aboard, but they didn't mistreat anyone. They took the crew's weapons and escorted them to holding areas, but they were polite. They gave them food and water. When one of Vexith's crew members had a medical emergency, human medics treated him immediately. Vexith was taken to meet with Minseo. She expected interrogation and threats. Instead, he offered her tea. "Why did you surrender?" he asked. "Because I saw what happened to the Healing Dawn," Vexith said quietly. "Because I realized my government lied to me. Because I'm tired of fighting a war that began with a war crime. Minseo nodded. Will you help us? We need information about Talvarian fleet positions. Vexith thought about it. This felt like betrayal. But was it really betrayal to oppose a war crime? I'll tell you what I know, she said finally. But only military information. I won't help you hurt civilians. We're not interested in hurting civilians, Minseo assured her. We're here for justice, not revenge. Over the next 3 weeks, 40 more Talvarian ships surrendered. Word spread that the humans treated their prisoners well, that they followed their own rules even when fighting an enemy that had broken those rules. This created a crisis within the Talvarian military. Some officers wanted to keep fighting. Others questioned why they were fighting at all. War Master Korvath grew desperate. His outer defenses had collapsed. His supplies were running low. His communications were disrupted. And worst of all, his own officers were starting to doubt him. He made a decision born of desperation. Launch Operation Retribution, he ordered. Send the reserve fleet to attack human colonies. Force them to negotiate. 200 Talvarian warships jumped to hyperspace heading for human territory. Their target was New Sol, humanity's largest colony outside Earth. The colony had 4 million inhabitants. Korvath believed that threatening them would force Earth to back down. He had badly miscalculated. Colonial Defense Commander Hajun received warning of the incoming fleet from long-range sensors. He had only 80 ships under his command. Old ships, most of them. The colony fleet consisted of vessels that Earth had retired from frontline service. But Hajun was a veteran and his crews were highly trained. All ships, battle stations, he ordered. Form defensive pattern around the colony. Civilian evacuation protocols are active. We hold until they leave or we're all dead. The Talvarian fleet emerged from hyperspace expecting easy targets. Instead, they found Hajun's ships ready and waiting. The colonial vessels were older, slower, and less powerful. But they fought with desperate courage. The battle lasted 6 brutal hours. Hajun's ships used every trick they knew. They hid behind the colony's orbital platforms. They used the colony's shipyards as cover. They coordinated their fire to concentrate on individual enemy ships. When their weapons ran out, they rammed enemy vessels. Hajun's flagship was crippled in the 3rd hour of fighting. He transferred his flag to a destroyer and kept fighting. By the 5th hour, he had lost 40 ships. But the Talvarian fleet had lost 150. The survivors, badly damaged and demoralized, jumped back to hyperspace and fled. New Sol survived. The colony had taken damage, but the civilians were safe. Hajun stood on the bridge of his battered destroyer and looked at what remained of his fleet. 40 ships lost, 12,000 casualties, but they had held. When news of the New Sol battle reached Fleet Fury, the reaction was immediate. Admiral Kyungho's expression was cold as ice. They attacked our civilians. They learned nothing. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships maximum speed. We advance on Talvarius Prime immediately. No more raids. No more blockades. We end this now. Fleet Fury accelerated toward the Talvarian homeworld. They had been careful before, methodical. Now they were done being patient. The attack on New Sol had proven that the Talvarian leadership would never surrender on their own. They needed to be forced. Captain Borum felt a grim satisfaction as she watched the navigation display. Soon they would arrive at Talvarius Prime. Soon this war would end. She thought about the Healing Dawn and its 600 dead. She thought about the New Sol defenders who had died protecting their homes. Justice is coming, she said quietly. Behind the advancing fleet, the Talvarian Empire was collapsing. Colonies surrendered to human occupation. Military bases lay in ruins. Communication networks were shattered. And in every system, the humans broadcast the same message. Surrender and face justice, or fight and be destroyed. Choose. Most chose surrender. They had seen what happened to those who fought. They had seen the humans fight with terrible efficiency. They had seen that human mercy only extended to those who gave up. Those who continued to fight found no mercy at all. On Talvarius Prime, War Master Korvath watched his empire burn. He had 300 ships left. Orbital defense platforms. Planetary shields. It would have to be enough. Because the humans were coming and they would not stop until they got what they came for. Justice. Fleet Fury traveled through hyperspace for 17 days. The ships moved in perfect formation, maintaining radio silence. No transmissions. No communications with the outside galaxy. They were ghosts moving through the dimensions, and they wanted to stay that way until they arrived. Admiral Kyung-ho spent those days planning. He stood in the war room of the Retribution with his senior officers, studying holographic displays of Talvarian space. The direct route would take them straight to the Talvarian homeworld, but that was what the enemy expected. Kyung-ho had not survived 4 decades of military service by being predictable. "We come in from the edge of their territory," he explained, pointing to a region marked in red on the display. "Through the Kelthros graveyard. It's a debris field from an ancient war. Thousands of wrecked ships. Sensors don't work well there. They won't see us coming until we're on top of them." Captain Borum studied the route. "That adds 3 days to our travel time." 3 days, Kyung-ho agreed. "But those 3 days give us surprise, and surprise wins battles." While the officers planned strategy, the rest of the fleet prepared for war. In the hangar bays of the carriers, pilots ran simulation after simulation. They practiced attack patterns, evasion maneuvers, and coordinated strikes until they could fly them perfectly, even while exhausted. The pilots were young, most of them in their 20s. They joked and laughed between missions, but their eyes were hard. They had all seen the footage from the Healing Dawn. Marine Commander Jiwoo drilled her troops relentlessly. The 5th Orbital Drop Division practiced boarding actions in the massive cargo holds of the troop transports. They wore full combat armor and used live ammunition. Mistakes were not acceptable. When they boarded enemy ships, there would be no second chances. One young Marine, a private named Kwan, asked Jiwoo a question during a break. "Commander, what if they surrender? What if they don't want to fight?" Jiwoo looked at him steadily. "Then we take them prisoner and treat them according to the rules of war. The same rules they broke when they fired on the Healing Dawn. We're not monsters, Private. We're soldiers. We do this the right way." In the Secure Communications Center of the Retribution, Intelligence Officer Seojin and her team worked their magic. They had captured Talvarian communication protocols during previous encounters. Now they were preparing to use them. 48 hours before Fleet Fury would arrive in Talvarian space, Seojin activated her plan. Every Talvarian military frequency suddenly received a transmission. It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't hidden. It was broadcast clearly for everyone to see. The transmission showed the sensor logs from the Healing Dawn attack. Every Talvarian officer, every soldier, every ship commander watched the footage. They saw War Captain Rexith give the order to fire. They saw the hospital ship break apart. They saw the bodies of medical personnel floating in space. They saw Dr. Minji's body curved protectively over the Talvarian soldier she died trying to save. Below the video, a simple message appeared in Talvarian script. "We are coming." The effect was immediate. Some Talvarian commanders tried to delete the transmission, but it kept reappearing. Seojin's team had planted it deep in their systems. Others watched it and felt sick. Many had not known about the attack. Their government had called it a regrettable incident and moved on. Now they saw the truth. On the Talvarian homeworld, War Master Korvath received reports about the transmission. He was furious. The humans were conducting psychological warfare. He issued orders to block the transmissions, but it was too late. The video had spread everywhere. Civilians had seen it. Soldiers had seen it. Even his own officers were questioning him. "The humans are bluffing," Korvath told his staff. "They're a minor power. They've never fielded more than 50 ships at once. We'll send 3 fleet groups to intercept them. 200 ships. That should be more than enough." He gave command of the first intercept group to War Captain Rexith. 70 ships, including Rexith's flagship Vengeance of Talvar. Korvath considered it a reward for Rexith's aggressive tactics. Other officers thought it was madness to promote the officer responsible for starting this war. But no one dared contradict the War Master. Fleet Fury emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kelthros graveyard. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Dead ships from a war fought 10,000 years ago drifted in the darkness. Some were so old that no one remembered which species built them. Captain Borum stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and smiled. This was perfect terrain for an ambush. She sent a message to Admiral Kyung-ho. "Recommend we use the graveyard for initial engagement. The debris will mask our numbers." Kyung-ho agreed immediately. He had been thinking the same thing. "Approved. Take your carrier group and 30 destroyers. Make yourselves visible. Let them think you're the entire fleet. Borum's force moved forward while the rest of Fleet Fury hid in the graveyard. They positioned themselves behind the larger wrecks, their stealth systems active. Human stealth technology was something special. Humanity had traded with isolationist species that the rest of the galaxy avoided. Those species had taught humans tricks that most galactic powers didn't know existed. War Captain Rexith arrived with his 70 ships. His sensors detected Borum's force immediately. 30 ships, smaller vessels. He laughed. This is what the humans send? 30 destroyers? They insult us. One of his officers was more cautious. Sir, this could be a trap. The humans aren't stupid. They wouldn't send such a small force against us. Rexith waved him off. They're trying to bluff us with psychological warfare. They show us a video and think we'll run away. I'll show them what happens when you threaten the Talvarian Empire. All ships attack formation. We'll destroy them quickly. His fleet advanced into the graveyard. The human destroyers fell back as if retreating. Rexith's ships followed, eager for an easy victory. They moved deeper into the debris field, spreading out to avoid the larger wrecks. That's when Fleet Fury struck. The rest of the human fleet emerged from behind the ancient wrecks. 40 dreadnoughts, 150 cruisers, hundreds of destroyers and frigates. They appeared like ghosts materializing from nothing. Their weapons were already charged and targeting solutions were locked in. Admiral Kyungho's voice was calm when he gave the order. Fire! Human railguns spoke first. They didn't fire energy weapons like most galactic species. They fired solid metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds. The Talvarian shields were designed to deflect plasma and lasers. They did almost nothing against solid projectiles moving at relativistic velocities. The first volley destroyed 12 Talvarian ships instantly. The metal slugs punched through shields, through armor, through ships. They went in one side and out the other, leaving destruction in their wake. The Talvarian fleet tried to respond, but they were scattered and confused. They had expected an easy fight. Instead, they were being slaughtered. Captain Borum's carrier group launched 3,000 strike craft. The small fighters swarmed over the Talvarian ships like angry insects. They carried precision missiles and kamikaze drones. They coordinated their attacks with frightening efficiency. Marine Commander Jiwoo watched from her transport as the battle unfolded. Her job would come later, during the boarding actions. For now, she could only observe. The carnage was terrible and beautiful. Human weapons tore through Talvarian vessels with clinical precision. Intelligence officer Seojin activated the second part of her plan. Her team had planted viruses in the Talvarian communication systems when they sent the video. Now those viruses activated. Talvarian targeting computers began giving false information. Their shields flickered randomly. Their engines stuttered. War Captain Rexith realized too late that he had been led into a trap. His fleet was dying around him. He tried to order a retreat, but half his ships weren't receiving his commands. The humans had infected his entire network. He watched in horror as ship after ship exploded or went dark. All ships, emergency jump, he screamed. Get out of here! But the human ships had positioned themselves perfectly. There was no clear escape route. Every direction led toward human weapons. Rexith's flagship tried to run, but 3 human cruisers focused their fire on his engines. The vengeance of Talvar went dead in space. Marine Commander Jiwoo got her order. Commander, you're cleared for boarding action. Take the flagship, Jiwoo smiled grimly. 5th Division, move out. The boarding pods launched from the transport. They were small, fast, and nearly impossible to shoot down. They slammed into the hull of Rexith's flagship and burned through the armor. Marines poured into the ship wearing full combat gear. The fighting inside was brutal but short. The Talvarian crew fought hard, but they were not prepared for human Marines. Jiwoo's people moved through the ship with practiced efficiency. They used stun weapons when possible, lethal force when necessary. Within 20 minutes, they had secured the bridge. War Captain Rexith stood with his hands raised. He looked at Jiwoo with fear in his eyes. You're going to kill me, he said. Jiwoo shook her head. No. You're going to face trial for what you did to the Healing Dawn. You're going to answer for those 600 lives. She opened a channel to Admiral Kyungho. Sir, we have him. War Captain Rexith is in custody. The message reached Earth at 03:47 hours Universal Time. A communications officer at Luna Station received the distress beacon first. She watched the sensor logs with growing horror. Then she watched the video feeds. Then she threw up in her wastebasket. 10 minutes later, Every government on Earth knew what had happened to the healing dawn. By sunrise, the entire human species knew. The video footage spread across every network, every data stream, every colony from Mercury to the outer settlements. Humanity watched Captain Jinho die on his bridge. They watched Dr. Minji shield her patient with her own body. They watched Nurse Doyen help people to safety until fire consumed him. They watched their healers murdered for the crime of showing mercy. The outrage was instant and absolute. On Earth, millions poured into the streets. They didn't riot. They didn't loot. They simply stood together in silence, watching the footage on public screens. In New Seoul, the largest human colony outside Earth, people gathered in the central plaza. Some wept. Others stood rigid with fury. But all of them watched. Ambassador Taehyun rushed to the Galactic Council station orbiting the neutral world of Centrum. He carried the complete sensor logs, medical records, and testimony from the survivors. The council chamber was a massive sphere where representatives from 40 species floated in zero gravity, each in their own environmental pod. Taehyun's pod rose to the speaking position. He was a career diplomat, trained to remain calm under pressure. But his voice shook as he presented the evidence. 600 medical personnel, unarmed, clearly marked, broadcasting their humanitarian status on every frequency. They were murdered. The council members reviewed the data. There was no question about the facts. The Healing Dawn was obviously a hospital ship. The attack was clearly illegal under galactic law. War Captain Rexith had committed a war crime. The evidence was overwhelming. Then the debate began. The Centauri representative suggested forming an investigative committee. It would take 6 to 8 months to complete their report. The Andromedan representative proposed sanctions against the Talvarian Empire, to be implemented over a 5-year period. The Syrian delegate recommended a strongly worded statement of condemnation. Taehyun listened with increasing disbelief. 6 to 8 months? He asked quietly. A strongly worded statement? 600 of our people are dead. They were healers. They saved lives from both sides of this war. And you want to form a committee? The Talvarian representative, an elderly bureaucrat named Kelvix, spoke up. His voice was defensive. The incident is regrettable, but perhaps there were circumstances we don't understand. War Captain Rexith is a decorated officer. Perhaps the human vessel wasn't as clearly marked as claimed. We have the sensor logs, Taehyun interrupted. We have video. Your officer murdered 600 people and you dare suggest they deserved it? Kelvix bristled. I suggest nothing of the sort. I merely say that humans are new to galactic affairs. Perhaps you don't understand the complexities of... Taehyun cut the connection to his pod and left the chamber. There was no point in staying. The galaxy had made its position clear. They would do nothing. When he returned to Earth, he went directly to the president's office. President Sunwoo was watching the Healing Dawn footage again.
He had watched it 15 times already.
Each time he hoped to see something different. Each time he watched his people die. The council? Sunwoo asked. They want to form a committee, Taehyun said bitterly. They'll have a report ready in 6 to 8 months. Then they'll debate sanctions. Maybe issue a statement, Sunwoo nodded slowly. He had expected nothing more. The Galactic Council was a bureaucracy that measured its responses in years and decades. They dealt with problems by studying them until everyone forgot why they were problems in the first place. But humanity didn't work that way. Sunwoo called an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly. Representatives from every nation, every colony, every settlement gathered in the Great Hall in Geneva. The chamber was silent as he walked to the podium. They fired on a hospital ship, he began. His voice was quiet, almost conversational. They killed people whose only weapons were medical tools. They murdered healers. And the galaxy asked us to wait, to be patient, to trust in their justice. He paused, looking at each face in the chamber. I say we show them what human justice looks like. The vote was unanimous. Within 1 hour, the mobilization began. Every military vessel in human space received recall orders. The orbital shipyards above Earth, Mars, Luna, and Titan shifted to wartime production. Civilians volunteered for military service in numbers that crashed the recruitment systems. In 48 hours, 40 million people had enlisted. Admiral Kyung-ho was retired, living on a small farm in Korea. He had commanded Earth's fleet during the colonial wars 20 years ago. Now he grew vegetables and tried to forget the things he had seen. But when the call came, he didn't hesitate. Within 6 hours, he was on a shuttle heading to Luna Station. They gave him command of everything. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon humanity had ever built. The force assembled in orbit above Earth was the largest military fleet humans had ever created. 40 dreadnoughts, each one carrying enough firepower to crack a moon. 150 cruisers designed for long-range combat. 400 destroyers built for speed and precision. 800 frigates for patrol and support. 200 carriers holding 12,000 strike craft. And 50 support vessels carrying supplies, ammunition, and repair equipment. Captain Borum stood on the bridge of her carrier, indomitable, and watched the fleet assemble. She had never seen so many ships in one place. The sight should have been beautiful. Instead, it was terrifying. This was humanity's rage made visible. Marine Commander Jiwoo inspected her troops in the massive hangar bay of a troop transport. The 5th Orbital Drop Division was humanity's best. They trained for boarding actions, orbital assault, and ship-to-ship combat. Now they were preparing for the largest military operation in human history. Jiwoo looked at her soldiers. Many were young, barely 20 years old. Some were veterans of colonial conflicts. All of them had volunteered. All of them knew why they were here. Intelligence Officer Seojin worked in a secure facility deep beneath the surface of Luna. Her team had been analyzing Talvarian communications for weeks, breaking their encryption codes, mapping their military networks. Now they were preparing something special. When Fleet Fury arrived in Talvarian space, they would not come alone. They would bring ghosts into the enemy's systems. The fleet was ready in 17 days. It should have taken months to assemble such a force. But humans worked around the clock, driven by a fury that needed no explanation. The ships hung in orbit like a promise of violence. Admiral Kyung-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship Retribution. The name had been his choice. He opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the fleet, every colony, every settlement. His words were simple. We did not start this war. We asked for nothing but to heal the wounded. They answered us with murder. The galaxy expects us to wait for justice. We will not wait. We will bring justice ourselves. We will show them that humanity's mercy has limits. We will show them what happens when you fire on a hospital ship. He paused, and his next words were edged with ice. We are Fleet Fury, and we are coming. The fleet jumped to hyperspace as one. 40 billion tons of steel, weapons, and fury vanishing into the dimension between dimensions. Their destination was Talvarian space. Their purpose was simple. War Captain Rexith would face justice. War Master Korvath, who had covered up the crime, would face justice. The Talvarian Empire, which had dismissed the murders as acceptable, would learn what humans thought of their excuses. Behind the fleet, Earth continued its preparations. Factories worked day and night. Shipyards laid down new keels. Training centers filled with volunteers. If the galaxy thought humanity would forget, they were wrong. Humanity never forgot. The medical ship Healing Dawn floated quietly in the darkness of space. Its white hull gleamed under the distant stars, marked with huge red crosses that could be seen from thousands of kilometers away. Inside, Captain Jinho sat in his command chair, reviewing the day's patient reports. They had saved 43 lives today. 17 Talvarians, 26 Kellians, and the rest from smaller species caught in the crossfire of this terrible war. Jinho was tired. He had been commanding hospital ships for 12 years, but this war was different. The Talvarian Empire and Kellian Dominion had been fighting for 3 years now, and neither side seemed interested in stopping. The Healing Dawn moved between battle zones, picking up the wounded, healing them and sending them home. It didn't matter which side they came from. Pain was pain. Blood was blood. In the medical bay, Dr. Minji worked on a Talvarian soldier who had lost his arm in an explosion. The soldier was young, maybe 20 years old in human terms. He kept apologizing for bleeding on her table. Minji smiled at him gently. "You're in a hospital," she said. "Bleeding is allowed here." Nearby, Nurse Doyen checked on a Kellian officer recovering from plasma burns. The officer asked him a question that Doyen had heard 100 times before. "Why do you humans do this? You're not part of our war. Why risk your lives for us?" Doyen gave his standard answer. "Because someone has to care. Because healing shouldn't choose sides." Down in the engine room, Engineer Hyejin crawled through access tunnels, fixing a coolant leak. The Healing Dawn was old, nearly 40 years in service. Parts failed constantly. But Hyejin knew every pipe, every wire, every system. She kept the ship running through skill and determination. The ship groaned and creaked, but it flew. Captain Jinho received a message from Earth Command. They wanted to know if the Healing Dawn needed to return home for repairs. Jinho looked around his bridge. His crew was exhausted. The ship was falling apart. But there were still wounded people out there. Negative, he transmitted back. We're needed here. On the observation deck, a group of recovering patients watched the stars together. A Talvarian pilot sat next to a Kellian Marine. 2 weeks ago, they might have killed each other. Now they played cards and shared stories about their families. This was what the Healing Dawn meant. This was why they were here. The warning alarm shattered the peaceful moment. "Captain," the sensor officer shouted. "Warship approaching. Talvarian signature." Jinho stood up immediately. "Broadcast our identification. All frequencies. Make sure they know we're a medical vessel." The communications officer's fingers flew over her console. "Broadcasting now, sir. Red Cross signals active. Medical transponder at full power. They can't miss it." The Talvarian warship was called Vengeance of Talvar. It was huge, bristling with weapons. On its bridge, War Captain Rexith studied the Healing Dawn on his screens. His officers informed him that the vessel was clearly marked as a hospital ship. The medical transponder was genuine. There was no doubt about its purpose. "Captain," one of his officers said carefully, "that's a protected vessel under galactic law. We cannot engage." Rexith's face twisted with anger. He had lost his brother to the Kellians 2 months ago. He saw enemies everywhere now. They could be carrying Kellian spies, he said. They could be hiding weapons. "Charge weapons, but sir, I gave you an order." On the Healing Dawn, Captain Jinho watched the warship's weapons power up. His blood went cold. "No," he whispered. "No, they wouldn't. They can't." He opened a direct channel to the Talvarian ship. His voice was calm but firm. "Talvarian vessel, this is Captain Jinho of the Earth medical ship Healing Dawn. We are a protected hospital vessel. We carry wounded from both sides of your conflict. We are unarmed. Please stand down." There was no response. Hyejin saw the warning lights in engineering. The ship's computers had detected weapon locks. Multiple weapon locks. "Captain," she called over the intercom. "They're targeting us." Jinho made a decision. "Emergency broadcast. All hands abandon ship procedures. Get the patients to the escape pods now." But there wasn't enough time. The first plasma lance hit the medical bay. The reinforced hull melted like butter. Dr. Minji saw the blast coming and threw herself over the young Talvarian soldier she had been treating. The explosion consumed them both. Doyen was helping a patient to an escape pod when the second blast hit. The corridor became fire and vacuum. Captain Jinho stood on his bridge as the third shot destroyed the command section. His last thought was of his daughter back on Earth. She was 7 years old. He had promised to come home for her birthday. Eugene was in the lower engineering section when the ship broke apart. The blast threw her against a bulkhead. Her arm snapped. 2 of her ribs cracked. But she was conscious. She crawled to the emergency beacon station, leaving a trail of blood behind her. With her good hand, she activated the distress signal. The beacon transmitted everything. Sensor logs showing the Healing Dawn's clear identification. Medical records proving their humanitarian mission. Video feeds from the attack. And voices. The last voices of people who had dedicated their lives to saving others. Dr. Minji's voice, calm even in death. "I just wanted to help them." "All of them," Nurse Doyen's voice, confused and hurt. "But we're doctors. We're just doctors." Captain Jinho's voice steady until the end. "Tell Earth, tell them what happened here. Tell them." The transmission cut off. War Captain Rexith watched the hospital ship break apart. 600 people died in less than a minute. He felt a moment of doubt, quickly buried. "Log it as a legitimate military target," he ordered. Suspected of carrying contraband and spies. But the debris field told a different story. Escape pods drifted through space containing 89 survivors. Medical supplies scattered like snow. Bodies in white coats with red crosses floated among the wreckage. One piece of debris was particularly damning. It was a section of the medical bay, and through the shattered viewport, the galaxy could see what remained of Dr. Minji. Her body was still curved protectively over the Talvarian soldier she had died trying to save. Even in death, she was a healer. The distress beacon continued broadcasting. It would take 17 hours for the signal to reach Earth. 17 hours before humanity learned that someone had fired on their healers. 17 hours before everything changed. In the cold vacuum of space, the wreckage of the healing dawn drifted silently. The red crosses on its hull fragment still glowed faintly in the starlight, marking it for what it had been, a ship of mercy, destroyed by those who had none.